Aloha and welcome to the Daily AI Show. Today is February 3rd and it is 2025. And we are going to be discussing this AI model explosion, right? All of these models have been coming out recently, tons of announcements. So we got to ask ourselves, what are we going to cover? Current state of AI models. You can expect whatever the upcoming announcements are. What are our most anticipated developments? And taking a look at identifying the gaps in AI models and what they offer us. I'm joined by Beth and Andy today, and I am Jyunmi. So let's get this started. Andy, do you have any insights into what models have you been seeing coming out?
Yeah. So recently, there's been a lot of press attention to the Chinese models and their leadership in certain realms, in particular, the DeepSeek line that came out with our a reasoning model. So we can kind of classify all the models that are out there in various ways, whether they're multimodal or they're just text only, whether they're focused on images or not. DeepSeek came out with a general purpose reasoning model that immediately came up to the top of the leaderboards. I'm going to share my screen and just show you what the LLM Arena leaderboard looks like right now for all models. And then we can kind of look and see what it is that we're dealing with when we talk about the explosion of models. So here we have a list that's led by the Gemini 2.0 flash thinking one. Now, LLM Arena is the place where you don't get to choose which model you're comparing. You give it a prompt, you are then delivered the answers from two different models, and you don't know which models they are, and you have to choose which one of them you want to use. So it's basically an A/B test between two different models, and they have a very sophisticated system that basically runs any model against any other model over the course of time against millions and millions of searches or queries like that. And this is the result. And this is today's leaderboard with Gemini 2.0 flash thinking at the top. And Gemini is also in the number 2 position with an earlier version of their Gemini model. This is probably the Gemini advanced model, something like that. We might think of that one as Bard. Gemini advanced is a kind of a general purpose consumer model. Gemini 2.0 flash thinking is a reasoning model. And then you have GPT-4o. And you notice that GPT-4o latest, this one that was delivered on November 20th, is actually outperforming o1 preview and o1 that was delivered on December 17th. So that's kind of interesting to me. I was thinking that o1 would be preferred in many respects, but remember that most of the tests that are run on LLM Arena are not reasoning tests. Right. So the reasoning models like o1, for example, and DeepSeek R1, which you see here in the number 3 position in rank, they kind of, you could have multiple top ranked models, as you see with the two Gemini players here. They're not too far apart in terms of their numbers. Right. And then let me just point out also over here on the right, you see that most of these are proprietary models, but DeepSeek R1 is an open source model. And that also is one of the reasons why DeepSeek got so much attention recently, is that it's at the top of the leaderboards compared to even the most expensive builds of the proprietary models. But this is an open source model, including the open source weights. Notice DeepSeek V3 down here is a different license, and that's because they don't actually provide the weights. They provide some guidance about how this is built, but they don't really make it possible, as in the case of R1, to completely replicate it in your own instance. You'd have to do some training, I guess, on the foundation model that's available in open source. I wanted to point out quickly here that you don't see any of the O3 models here from OpenAI, and I think that's because they're not generally available right now. The only place that I've been able to play with O3, because I'm not a pro user, is in Cursor. Cursor does offer O3 Mini, and it's a, that's a model that's designed for coding. So in Cursor, that desktop coding agent, you can use O3, and I've used O3 Mini in that way. Before I close out, I'll just say, here's step 2, 16K context window experimental, which is way up there in the list. That is also a Chinese company. StepFun is the name of the company, and they are the #1 LLM chatbot service used in China. So China doesn't use DeepSeek as much as they use StepFun, Step 2 or Step Star range of models. And I haven't played with it ever, but it is available to us. You can check that out. Okay.
But also Yi Lightning, and if you go over to the organization, they've chosen O1 AI, which is like, of course, why wouldn't you do that if that was available? Just to make it totally more confusing.
How does that work? Yeah, what does that mean?
And Karl's joined us. Karl, do you have any insights into, or what are your thoughts on the recent AI model explosion, and what do you see the next steps coming out?
I just want to clarify one thing before Karl jumps in. I do have O3 on my desktop ChatGPT. So I think the minis are available. The regular O3 is not, but the mini and mini high are, when they drop them, they did one of their rapid deployments, and I think everybody had it within a little bit of time.
Yeah, let me just show you before I stop sharing. This is the kind of statistical and graphical analysis that the LM chatbot arena at lmarena.ai provides. And you can see that they score the models in terms of their over here average win rate against all other models. And you can see that Gemini and ChatGPT 4o are really at the top there, the top 4 positions, followed later by Gemini 1.5 Pro, which is the less expensive and more widely used of the Gemini models. And then here's the reasoning model, Gemini 2.0 Flash Thinking here. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing. If you'll take me off the screen there, Beth, thank you.
Yep, great. Okay, Karl, what we're talking about is just like the AI model explosion that we all just seem to go through for the last week or two.
For me, I've actually had to just I don't know. I've been using some models recently, and I haven't been using them for a while. So I'm curious. I'm kind of really contemplating canceling a bunch of them just because it's just sitting there. And honestly, Claude and Gemini haven't been like, I've done deep research, Google's deep research, but when I ran deep research this morning for a couple, like there's a couple client things that they were wanted to test it out.
Mm-hmm.
It's not, I wouldn't, I would use OpenAI's deep research just because of the reasoning component to it.
So this is also going to be confusing because everybody named the things the same thing.
Yeah. So yeah, it's very interesting that, and that's the thing is, so for most people, even just using ChatGPT, you have, I don't think most people scroll down and see all those, every single piece. If you pay for it, if you even get the plus, you got 4.0 is scheduled tasks, 01, 03, 03, 03 mini, 01, and then anyone who uses Pro, 03 mini high, 01 Pro mode. You've got operator, you've got Sora. So I think it's for power users, it's no problems. But even then, you're like, this is getting confused. It isn't confusing, but it's more of, there's a lot. And I can only imagine when people see the different things. But still, I think that that widespread number of LLMs just benefits OpenAI, because I think outside the AI bubble, there's only one. Every single business that we talk to, it's like only one. maybe it's Copilot, but it's still under the same kind of umbrella, but it's only one.
Right.
It was like when I say Gemini, Anthropic, Claude, and everyone's heard of DeepSeek, but when people say, "Oh, no one downloaded," from who I talk to, I'll be, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 more prospect meetings this week, and I'm gonna ask the same question, and I highly, highly doubt maybe one person, maybe, of the people that we talk to would have downloaded anything other than ChatGPT. That's
Right.
just how it is in the market. So there's lots of models, but in most people's minds, there's only one, and which is it. That's a fascinating thing in its own.
Yeah, on that point, I have some numbers because looking at their performance in the LLM Arena is one thing to evaluate their capabilities and whether human preferences actually show that one model is superior to another for their purposes. But then there's the question of why is one model used in larger numbers on the web than another? And so this is a ranking of the proprietary models in estimated number of monthly users. So here we go. Number one, as we know, ChatGPT 4.0, 460 million monthly active users. Then we have Gemini 1.5 Pro, 200 million, Claude at 50, XAI, Grok coming free to all users of X at 20 million, DeepSeek R1, 10 million. And by the way, that there was a question in the chat about why. I wonder why DeepSeek isn't used in China. Well, it is used in China by millions and millions of users. It's just that the step fund one has been around longer, and more Chinese use the step fund model than do the DeepSeek one yet. And then you have some others down here below. On the open source front.
Wait, hold on 1 second. If you're at the very bottom of that, it's Bard.
Yes. Yeah, I asked the question. Why are you including Bard? I thought that was deprecated and it's no longer used. Well, no, Bard in OpenAI, or I'm sorry, Perplexity using Claude explained in detail that that's actually what they are referring to as Bard is actually the Gemini Advanced. So Gemini Advanced is what is presented to consumers in all of the Google applications. But you see, it's still, despite its incredible reach that way, it's not being offered. It's called Gemini in the Google apps that you use, whether Gmail or Google Docs, etc. So that's why it's listed there. But they meant they still use the term Bard for that consumer-facing Google product. Let me show you what the open source
That's not confusing at all.
No, yeah, that's right.
I mean, it's a rebranding strategy, right? Because Bard was not received well as a name.
Yeah,
and became in line with the rest of the Gemini naming sequences.
Because it wasn't a good model.
Okay, so here we see the incredible dominance of the Llama models in open source. They're used around the world by 600 million users. Then DeepSeek V3 is, the next one with 10 million. I've never heard of Tulu, but we did hear about Qwen 2.5, which was released very recently, just after DeepSeek, and it's much more capable, and it is also a reasoning model. So it's in advance of Mistral 7B. That's another name that you've heard about in open source, but which has only around 4 million users by these estimates. I'm not vouching for any of these statistics, but this is what Perplexity came up with after reviewing a number of different sources.
Right.
All right. So that's where the rank are, how these many models rank in terms of actual utilization by users out there in the wild.
So there are clearly some that are just not even breaking through to us, right? Like Granite, XA1, those 6, 7, and 8. I'm not sure that I can read what 8 is, but I would say
Bloom.
half of these.
Bloom. I've never heard of it.
Right? Half of these I haven't heard of the 8. No, I guess the little, yeah, half. So that's really interesting. We had some comments. Let me take you off the thing. We had some comments in the chat that I think it makes good sense to address. So Greg said that he's having a challenge explaining to people, why do I need to show that the LLM is thinking? Like, why is the thinking model even relevant? And so what do we think about that? Have you had that same conversation, Karl?
No. So when I do my prospect discovery meetings, what part of when I go into practical business applications, when I show the reasoning, so I take like a scenario related to their business and then have O3 Mini do its thing, right? And then you can see. And in fact, DeepSeek does that better. What we're seeing is still just summary of the reasoning rather than the actual reasoning. And the reason why I show that, it's in context because I let the businesses and clients know, it's like, hey, you've got, I bring it into the 5 levels of OpenAI. So level 1 is the chatbots, right? But the level 2 is the reasoners. So I bring it into context, like, what does that actually mean? So when I say, hey, yeah, we're past level 2 or moving into level 3, but I have to explain what reasoning means, that's when I show. It's like the model. So there was a really good video by Dane Vahey on O1. And I don't know if you want to watch that, because I always use that as the
explanation.
Because he does it so well on like explaining what is the reasoning, why you should use it, and potential what is it and why you should use it, and then like applicate, like kind of an application for it in a different way.
Okay.
And it's just how he kind of presents it. So I thought that was a really good kind of and once I explain that, then everything kind of makes sense after it, kind of.
Okay.
I don't know if you want to see it.
I am going to say let's save that for tomorrow, because tomorrow we're talking about the O3 models and a little more deep into reasoning.
Okay.
So preview for tomorrow. Please come back. I just want to take Gwen's question, and then we can move on to some of the other models that are not the generative, like text AI, these kind of frontier, because we've had a lot of movement in that as well. Gwen says, I need a refresh on why they don't just get rid of models as they upgrade, so there's less confusion. And does anyone want to take that? Because I think there are definite answers.
Well, there's obviously it's probably less work for them just to leave those available. But I think the primary takeaway is, or at least what I've used in the past, is for comparison and to keep the same kind of response. Like, so if I'm using these models, particularly on the API side of things or in the playground, and I'm getting a certain kind of response, which is a component of a larger system, like an automation or something like that, it's important for me to be able to replicate that same response. If I throw in a new model, I have to readjust for it. Now, overall, I want to do my testing. I want to do my comparative testing and see if I can get better responses. Maybe I can streamline my automation. Maybe I can streamline my process. And so that'll be part of that maintenance and upgrading and in analysis and things like that. But for people who need a reliable response and they've gotten what they needed out of a specific model, I think that's the primary reason. And then beyond, testers, researchers, and things like that for comparative analysis.
Right. I agree. That's my thought about the reasoning too. In general, when you're coming in through the front interface, the chat, the Gemini, the ChatGPT, Perplexity, like up front, you tend not to get the date associated with the model. And you definitely don't get experimental without knowing that you're choosing to get experimental. But if you're building with the APIs on the back end, you don't want the automatic update, right? Like you want to be able to turn that on when you're ready to turn it on because you've tested whether your thing is still going to work with this new model. And like we have a little bit of an experience of that through building custom GPTs, right? We're sort of like mini developers with the custom GPT, and ChatGPT does just update on us. And an update has happened because if you're watching people talk about AI, there'll be a bunch of people that said, hey, did something happen? Because my custom GPTs is all just broke, right? They're getting a little bit better by saying, hey, we're going to do this. So test them because they may not work after this. But if you're really building on it and not going through the chat interface, that's going to be something that you're going to want to control a little bit more. So we've done the frontier model in this main kind of thing. And Karl, were you saying that you're like getting rid of Anthropic Claude? Is that one of your ones?
I think so, just because I haven't, like, the only thing I use it is for API, but I don't use the actual model enough because it was like, okay, what I started using it for was writing. I'm like, okay, but ChatGPT is good enough. Like, there's still sometimes, very rarely, but I was using it for artifacts. But I'm like, I don't need to. Canvas does the thing, and then yeah, and then essentially just what OpenAI is doing is what Apple did. More and more and more and more. I'm like, I don't really want to get off because I have to, like, I downloaded the desktop app, but I've never used the Claude desktop app. I've entirely started using more. It's just I can only do so much. And I was like, it's just getting easier and easier and easier. And then the writing update that ChatGPT did a couple months ago still was pretty good. Like, Claude still writes well, but it's like, I'm thinking I haven't used Claude enough to justify me paying for it. Not that it's like a significant amount for our business that we just write off, but like,
Interesting.
I was like, what would just more and more, I'm not finding it. So I'm really considering it, just because if another month goes by, I'm not using it. And the only thing I'll probably do with it is when they drop their next thing, test it out for a bit. But really, as long as it's in the API, then I don't really need the personal version of it.
How much of I mean, you're mentioning the API versus the the chat interface. Is your experience more on you're going for your work? Is your experience more using the API in general, or is it specifically for Claude use cases?
Well, there's specific things that the API does a little bit better in terms of reading PDFs compared to OpenAI's. Although I would say Cohere's model reads PDFs way better than either of them too. Most people don't know that, but Cohere they launched this thing. I forgot what it's called, but it's where most models, when they look at a PDF, even if they look at images, they tend to still gravitate towards text. But what Cohere did is their model, or part of their model, separates the two and puts them on equal footing. And I did a couple tests on a couple pretty significant PDFs with graphs and charts. Cohere did significantly better recognizing, pointing them out and retrieving them than either of the two. So I was like, oh, I figured that one is most people don't know because no one here talks about Cohere, but that's, and yeah, anything else, And then if I want to test something out, I just go
Mhm.
to the console. I don't need the actual application.
Yep.
Gotcha. It,
Yeah.
so this popped a question in my head. So with the models, and we took a look at the rankings that Andy put up from LLM Arena, and so my question for everybody is: are the LLMs, since so many different models have been coming out, and they're all announcing relatively, you know, really close within each other, and I'm sure that's part of their hype cycle, and take the wind out of some other people's sails and things like that. But is there clear in your minds, or are there clear use cases for the different models? Like you had mentioned Cohere and PDFs. Are the other models have those use cases, or those clear use cases that you would go to them for this thing? Is this what they're best at, kind of thing?
I think so, because that O3 mini high, if you've never used it, it's damn good. It's really, really, really good. That I was like, I used to run a lot of things through O1 Pro. I'm like, now it's not as I would get extensive as O1 Pro, but with web and it's fast. I've been using it a lot, like a lot more. So it's like for research, strategic thinking, any type of like things that you need to plan and organize, O3 mini high is like one of the it to me, it's better than anything out there. For writing,
Oh,
pure writing, then I would still say Sonnet 3.5. But for strategic thinking, because it has web, right? So I just click the reasoning aspect of it just helps. Like, yeah, it's just everything that I'm doing is O3 mini high.
so
I
I think
yeah.
I think that's really interesting because if we go back and we see Greg, I think is a fairly typical user, right? They don't use the API outside the apps, so the API is not that relevant. But he's feeling that the settling in period is happening now. And I think that's true. People are in overwhelm, which is one of the reasons we're doing the show, because we're in overwhelm. Like, what the heck just happened in the last 2 weeks? Like, we haven't even looked at Quen, right? Like, Quen seems very cool. Lots of people very excited about it. Just slipped right under the radar. And staying with what he first engaged, right? And I think that's something that people do when they start to feel overwhelmed. And also, there is a little bit of a learning curve when you switch to another flavor of generative AI models in terms of how they like to be prompted, right? So I'm wondering, like Karl, you're saying that Cohere is much better at PDFs. That I wonder if most people are like, it's not
There's
bad at PDFs, right? Like, I get an image that's kinda like,
I
Dolly is nowhere in the top 10 of image generation, but I get it with my ChatGPT, and, like, it's alright. Like, are we
I
in that place now?
do you notice that no one has Cohere Command R in any of the leaderboards? So that's not
Mhm,
it's barely even registering. So like it's part of the model, but there's a whole bunch of functions. They also have like it's called North now. Anyway, doesn't matter. What I think that like what people gravitate is like they like something, they're just gonna continue keep using it, right?
mhm,
And then and just keeps going. The hard thing about moving away from Chat GPT and OpenAI is all the stuff that they put in there. Now
right.
you're built in, right? Canvas is amazing. And project's okay. But like O3 Mini High for me, O1 Pro for the work I do for clients is outstanding. And yeah, I can keep switching back and forth, but I don't want to keep running DeepSeek on Olama for client work. I was like, this doesn't make any, I just don't want to do it. And I was just like, I have something. I have the desktop app. I have the mobile app. I can see everything. I have the history. I can go back and forth. I can talk to it.
Yeah.
And the significant web search on aspect of it that brings everything together. Every other model, Claude doesn't have the web search component.
Right.
Google's always an afterthought for me. So of those three, that's it. I laugh at Copilot just because it's sort of like there. You could use it, but like it's only for clients who are like
Who
it's
make you
only
use it?
who make me use it. And you're like, you gotta be kidding. And it's funny because the new Copilot agents that they built out is literally custom GPTs, but you can put actions in them, but you have to pay for Copilot Studio. But their regular agents, quote unquote, is literally a custom GPT because
Yeah.
but your knowledge source is SharePoint instead of just upload the knowledge source, which is the biggest pain in the ass. But think of it like a poor version of a custom GPT because its RAG retrieval is suspect a lot of the times.
So that's interesting. But you could have a common knowledge source, right?
Mhm.
Because with custom GPTs, you're not really sharing the knowledge source. Like you can have the same knowledge, like you could share the custom GPT, right? So you are sharing a common knowledge
Yeah.
source. But if the knowledge source is like embedded in the custom GPT, you have to manually update that. And it sounds like SharePoint might actually, like if everybody has access to that knowledge.
It does. The beauty thing of Copilot agents is, especially if there's different departments wanting to accomplish the same thing, they can share the agent and the permissions of how Microsoft makes it actually easier. So it's like, I want to share this custom Copilot agent with these 5 emails in the company. Cool. Then these 5 emails will see it. And then if you're all working together on that, then it's no problem. Like it's easier than doing a custom. Well, one or the other, because if you already built into the Microsoft network, and I've noticed a lot of companies who are just inside the Microsoft environment, it's easier for them because Teams is there. And in Teams, you can see the agent. So that's what makes it a lot easier, right? Then custom GPTs, you have to share the link. Even in enterprise, you have to share the link and you have to bookmark it, versus in your Teams, all the agents are shared with you. Yeah, I didn't want to make this a Copilot agent because agents still suck, but it's there. It's easy to do. And it gets 60-70% of the way there. That's good
Right.
enough for most people. That's, and security wise and all that fun stuff. IT people will just they'll default to it 100% of the time.
Yeah, that's true.
Looking at you, Jyunmi. When I said IT, it was looking at you.
I know. That's why I chimed in there.
And shaking my fingers at you too. Shaking my fist at you.
Look. We're just trying to make sure that everybody has a happy day. That's all. Less headaches for one is less headaches for another. But I did want to take the second to welcome Brian. Thanks for being able to join us. And so this might be a good opportunity to get your thoughts on this model explosion. Karl's regaled us with his experience with the different models. We asked the question, are there models that have, solve certain use cases better than others? He mentioned Cohere, and he gave us a great breakdown of what the leaderboards are. So what are your thoughts on all of these models all coming out, or at least being announced, relatively close to each other?
Yeah, obviously I'm a fan of open source because of what I think it can do to propel all sort of models forward. So, but at the same time, I don't really spend a lot of time playing with, open source models. I think there's a day here in the next 6 months or so where perhaps I do have some sort of light, 7B model sitting on my computer, or perhaps a separate computer. I actually saved a laptop at my house that my daughter wanted to move to a MacBook, And so we got her a used MacBook, but my previous laptop, that was before the one I'm using right now, I actually wiped it, and I kind of have it sitting in the room over here just for that reason, just to be able to have something that I can totally disconnect from anything else that really matters. That plus obviously agentic work and stuff that's coming in forward where you just don't really want it hooked up to anything that might be a LastPass or anything like that, right? So I can't really speak too much to the models. I've certainly used them. I've poked around and stuff. For me, and I know we have a show coming up on this, I'm the most impressed by Gemini. Most impressed by far. In fact, I just saw someone on TikTok giving a demo, but it had to do with the image side of it. And it was just blowing me away with the way able to do it. In other words, what they were doing on the demo, and it's not a new model per se, but anyway, just to this point, it was a picture, and then it was a picture of like, let's say a VW Bug, and the person just spoke into it. Of course, they could have typed to, and they said, make it a crop top, and it made it a convertible. But it was the exact same bug, but made it a convertible. Then they said, open the door, and there was a picture of the door open. Everything else stays identical in it. Then they said, let me see a top-down view of inside the VW Bug. That to me is just like mind-boggling, because we haven't had that kind of, like, I know Midjourney has, and we're getting better with like seeds and consistency through the models. But when I really look at what Google is doing, and obviously I've been a fanboy a little bit here lately about their experimental flash model and what that's doing in there. I know, Karl, you've probably already talked a little bit about the deep thinking of what came out with O3 last night in what, Japan, Tokyo. So I was watching that, a live announcement yesterday. But that's where I'm probably the most impressed right now. And while it's not the, it doesn't get the fanfare of DeepSeeks or models like that, or maybe a Mistral will have a push or whatever, I really think we're going to be talking a lot more about Google in the upcoming months.
Brian, can you get specific on which Gemini 2.0 model you're talking about? Is it,
which
is
one?
it there's Gemini 2.0 Flash Experimental, and there's Gemini 2.0 Flash Thinking, which is the reasoning version.
That's the deep one. Yeah, I'm talking about, I have used the deep thinking one, which I'm actually really impressed with. I was curious to hear what Karl said about that. I know he was talking about it yesterday. Karl, you were saying in, I think it's Slack or something. I saw you talking about it. The experimental is the one I'm referring to, that to me is on par with an R1 or an O1. And like I told you guys, what I'm the most impressed with is actually the combination of Perplexity. But based on what I saw last night with this O3 deep thinking, I almost wonder if it's going to be able to do a better job for that. Because what it sounds to me now with this research and what Ethan Mollick has said is, see, here was the problem in the past. Like, you would get, ChatGPT would gladly go out and look at something and come back with an answer. But now what they're demonstrating on the release last night is, oh, we're now getting like chain of thought thinking with deep research. And that's really powerful if you think about it, because what it means is, as it's going through its chain of thinking, it's not cemented when it comes out with the prompt, when it comes out with the result. And that's where we really were. Now it's like, oh, I go and look for this information, and based on that information sort of determines where my next step is. And then I go out and find that information, which is exactly the way a human would do research. And so I find those models to be like the deep thinking ones and what Google's putting out to be really fascinating. So all that to say, I'm not as well versed in the, I think, Andy, I lean on you a little bit more for the open source, or Karl, you might talk about it or whatever. So I'm always listening to you guys on like what's out there. But I'll be honest, I mean, I'm still 90% ChatGPT land, and all the things that come out to, because it sort of fits in with my job outside of Daily AI Show. And then, I mean, I'm just really impressed with Google, and I'm really impressed to see how they merge everything together with Google Workspace, because Scaled is a Google Workspace company. And so these are the tools I'm using all the time anyway in my day-to-day job. So I'm really interested to see how all those models play together really, really nicely. And I think, Karl, I kind of came in on it, but it sounded like you were talking about Microsoft. That's exactly what I see with Microsoft as well. And then I wouldn't look, Meta, they're going to come out with the new llamas. Grok, obviously, I wouldn't sleep on. I mean, there's a lot going on in those areas as well, that they're going to be fighting as well. So it's going to be interesting this year.
Interesting.
Speaking of Grok, Grok is number 12 on the LLM Arena ranked
And
leaderboard.
that's just like the general. We're not talking about like a thinking model or anything like that. That's just the general leaderboard.
Yeah. For all models competing against all other models, Grok's number 12.
It does
I would
include
imagine
the
you go up-
thinking models on there, but they're not a separate listing.
That's
Right.
right.
I would imagine to see them jump from 12 to 6 or higher in the next 3 months.
So which of the ones that we've talked about are multimodal? Gemini can generate
Gemini for
images
sure.
from within the chat. Grok is also multimodal. It generates images within it. You can give it, I don't know if you can give it Grok audio. You can give Gemini audio and it can have that voice conversation with you. Obviously, OpenAI. Claude is not. Isn't that like that? Maybe another ding about Claude is that it doesn't have access to the web, but it also doesn't generate images. Although I like that, like I'm interested in stay in your lane. I can search the web in other ways, but for an all-purpose model, Claude is like dropping off. What am I forgetting? Meta.
Yeah. And but did you guys talk about Perplexity Sonar or Sonar Pro that came out in the last week or two?
No.
Have we talked about those models?
Nope. Thank you.
Guys, Sonar and Sonar Pro are both impressive. And I mean, here's the thing. Perplexity is not just a place where you just connect to other models. Perplexity is absolutely fine-tuning and working on their own models. And they have been. Sonar has been out there for a while. They were built off the back of Llama. So like, for instance, just for anybody that might be wondering about this, when you use Perplexity, and you still can use it this way, and you connect through an API. So let's say you go into make.com and you just want to do a quick automation, right? You want to take a topic, or you want to take a topic, you want to run it through Perplexity with all the cited sources, and you want to output that to a Google Doc. Something super easy like that, like a 3-step automation. Okay. The way you would do it is you had to pick the API model of Perplexity that had access to the internet, and then it was at 3 different sizes, with 128 being the largest size. And so that's what we'd use. Well, just in the last 2 weeks, they've come out with Sonar and Sonar Pro, which I'm building this side project through a company called Jyunmi AI that's associated with Scaled. And so we've been doing that all through API. And this is how big of a deal it was. We had it built through the other models. And within 1 day, I was able to prove to the dev team that we should switch over to Sonar. Now, we could have done Sonar Pro, but there's a little bit higher thing, and they come back with twice as many citations through the API. In our particular use case, I was able to show on par results. And in some cases, doing side-by-side comparisons, I was able to show better results than what I previously built through custom GPTs using the best search functionality of a custom GPT right now, which I admit is actually pretty good. And Sonar was on par, if not in some cases better than that when you were looking at side-by-side results. So don't sleep on Perplexity, and not just what, like, yeah, we talk about it, but like their models, specifically what they're fine tuning and stuff like that. Never mind the fact that they can connect to O1, R1, I'm sure O3 very soon, O3 Mini, as well as some of these deep thinking ones, which if you think about it, fits really nicely in with the way that Perplexity works, because it's all about doing the deep research. So I would add this another one.
So Brian, do you have your go-to use cases for the different models? You've mentioned Gemini. It's been really impressing you on the deep thinking side.
Yeah.
You just talked about Sonar and Perplexity. So that's obviously a search. And like I said, Karl had mentioned Cohere. He likes to use it for PDFs. Is there use cases that you'll go to a particular model or platform to solve that problem?
Yeah. So, I mean, for me, if you're looking through API and you're looking to do quality research, that's going to be Sonar for me today. And it could change tomorrow, but that's going to be Sonar or Sonar Pro for me. I mean, you may find that you need double the amount of citations, and I want that to come back consistently through that API. And I just find it to be very, very helpful. So if I'm working through search related, if I want to do research, if I want cited sources, I'm going to end through an API specifically. I'm going to build that through like make.com, and I'm going to use Sonar. Right now, not the deep research, but the experimental thinking one, the one that's similar to R1 and O1 through Gemini. I've said it before, that one's free currently. Gemini's Google's allowing you to use it for free. You go to aistudio.google.com, and you can literally pick it from the drop down. What I really, really love about that is you can set the temperature. You can't do that with O1. I mean, through the API, I suppose you could, but you can't just go into ChatGPT and set temperature. One of the hugest drawbacks, if you ask me, about both custom GPTs and just general use ChatGPT, but I understand that's not the user they're going after, somebody who would even know what temperature is. But I do love that about Gemini is that I can just tweak that and bump that from 0.7 down to 0.5 or even 0.4 to get more direct answers. Because if I'm leaning on it to do the experimental thinking, I may not want as much creativity in there. Maybe I do. So I love that for that, Jyunmi. And then I would say outside of Gemini, Perplexity with Sonar, obviously for the API. Obviously, I use Perplexity through the actual website as well. Everything else is probably done through ChatGPT still, but every day I find a new reason why you have to get outside of that walled garden. So
Brian, wait till you try O3 Mini High, which I am the opposite of you. I am debating canceling Gemini completely, and their deep research, which is, I think an OpenAI researcher said it's using O3, the full O3 model. Like I'm just going through back and forth with some things that I'm like asking it specifically to include in the report that it's providing. It is because of that reasoning component and that high level reasoning component, it's ridiculous. I was like, I need you to do this. And the thing is, I ran Google's research for one client, I think a month back. I reran it. It was so much more on point than what Google provided to me. And I was just like, holy cow. And it explained why it did it. And I was like, okay, that's it. So now my thinking is if they ever combine that with Operator, did
you guys watch the announcement yesterday? Beth, you're on mute.
Yeah. The point is that this thing that you're referring to, Karl, which is the deep research from OpenAI, was just announced yesterday. So go ahead, Brian.
No, yeah, I was just if you watched the announcement yesterday, they made several references. The female that was there's 4 guys and 1 female, and when she was talking about it and where this is leading to, it 1,000% leads right into what they're doing with Operator, because you can see it, right? You can see how this level, and again, the big change for me with this model yesterday that they introduced was how it wasn't static. It was dynamic with its thinking process. Again, very human-like. Oh, I have a plan. I'm going to go to these 5 websites to get my cited sources. But after I go to website 1, I change my plan or I alter it slightly because of the information I found on 1, which may dictate that I go to 2, 3, and 4 differently, or perhaps skip 2 of them. That's what I saw yesterday. That's the difference for me, is that when they showed that, I'm like, okay, this is actual thinking through the process, and it's dynamic now, which means when you link that to Operator, you can absolutely see how these bigger, more complex thinking processes, look, they're not only are they going to write PhD reports and full papers and stuff like that, they're going to run across your entire browser, and then once it gets unchained from the browser, then we're off to the races.
And this was the thesis of Ethan Mollick's paper today, or blog post, I suppose you could call it.
I haven't had a chance to read it yet.
Blog, One Useful Thing. He literally is making your point, Brian, which is here I'm playing with the deep research thing that was just announced yesterday, and it's doing something that is much more agentic than anything I've ever seen before. So when you see the coming intersection between Operator and this model that has deep research capabilities with reasoning on top of it, we have something that's going to replace PhD level research assistants in the academic world. And he literally said in response to his experimentation with it that the output of it was a really good first result from a PhD student.
So there are 2 things about that. One, I sort of feel like he's the perfect person to make that statement, because we keep hearing it's like a PhD research student. Like I don't have a PhD research student, but he's a professor. He does have a PhD research student, right? Like he actually has that comparison. I could give it to somebody. Second is, Karl, are you here tomorrow? Because we really want to see what Brian's talking about with O3 Deep Research. And it's only
Yeah.
available to Pro right now. So you're the
Well,
only one of us who has it.
So what I've been doing, first of all, it has automatic access to Canvas. So like, for example, I asked it to give me a report. So the request was, hey, I need you to go research. These are the criteria, because this one company wants to research this company in terms of potentially acquisition. So here's the criteria that we want, and go find it. So I used Google a couple weeks ago, provided the report. And it was okay, because it was, I think it hit the criteria, but it was more of like exactly what Ethan was saying, was like, oh, this is summaries of these companies
Right.
that meet your criteria. But what this did was, there was 2 or 3 criteria that was kind of vague and open-ended. And then when you saw it do that, it was like, holy cow, it actually kind of understood what the vague references that they were talking about. And so it provided the report. I said, hey, just give it to me in, give me a summary of it and put it on a CSV. Gave me a CSV. It was like, I want a little bit more. So I just told it to do more stuff with it. Like, it does such a better job updating the table, the CSV itself, over and over and over. I've been doing it, like, as we speak. I've just been asking it to do more. And it's like, I remember when using tables with ChatGPT, just regular 4.0, it sometimes did it. It's kind of like 50% hit rate. This one, I feel like I haven't seen anything that, mind you, I've only been doing it this morning, so limited testing, but like,
'Cause it literally dropped last night.
it literally dropped. So I'm just asking it to add
Unannounced.
this, add company profile. Now add the website to it. Now go find stuff. And it's just doing it. And I'm like, holy cow. I haven't seen this level of like completeness in any model outside of O3 Mini High. Because O3 Mini is pretty good, but this thing with deep research, just referencing it, I don't know. I feel like there's something different here. I have to probably use it more, but just for this specific particular use case, is outstanding.
So
And
I have a question about that. So I have a project which originally, when this is at OpenAI in their projects, product, I had one that was generating multiple additions to a CSV file and then delivering the CSV file to me. And then I just dropped it for about a week, and I came back to it, and then it just stubbornly said it doesn't know how to do that.
Yeah.
It doesn't know how, what you were doing
exactly.
it before. Like, just in the chat thread, look, well, you can see you're giving me the CSV. No, I just don't have that capability. It's probably a system error or whatever. Now, what was you? So you're saying that when you use deep research, that model and what you're seeing in Pro that I can't see, you're saying that model actually has this file handling capability natively, and it's really working well.
Well, I asked it, okay, give it to me in Excel, give it to me in Word. Yeah, I like what you did with Excel, but I need you to add more information. And I just said, add this. And it did it. It added in the context of how it presented and exactly what I was looking for. Like, okay, I need more information, but give it to me in Word. It's like, cool. And now it's like, oh crap, I forgot the websites. Go find the websites for all these companies and put them in both. And it gave me put it in both. And that's such a small request, but I was like, damn it. Sometimes in ChatGPT it would mess that up. But here I'm confident, just with all the things that's happened, I'm confident that it would do all that. No problems. And it would fit. And it just fit. It just worked. It worked better, but in the context of this entire project. I don't know if I'm even describing what I'm seeing, especially with like how, we've all extensively used all these models before. This one was a little different. Again, in the deep research context, which is funny when you have it, all it is it's in ChatGPT 4 and it's just a little icon there, deep research. But as long as you're in that thread, it's so good. I was like, wow, this is
So wait, you're saying it's not using O1 even. It's using ChatGPT 4.0.
Oh no, it's under the 4.0. So here, I'll show you what that
Okay,
looks
yeah.
like. Yeah, probably. So this is another project that I'm in. So this one, right? This is a different than one that I was explaining. But like, yeah, so this started with deep research. So it would ask you, hey, I want to clarify a couple of things. Yeah, let's get started. Bang. And then it does its thing, 8 minutes, 28 sources. Read, search.
So I want to mention something about that 8 minutes of thinking that happened there. That seems like not a capability of 4.0, right? It's almost like they're calling on a different model that has inference time compute, which is
the
applying
open,
functions to that thinking process in advance of the final presentation, right?
Yeah, so it is. I think an OpenAI researcher said it's O3, full
Okay.
O3 that you're actually typing
Gotcha.
into. So,
Okay. Well, on that note, really quick, we don't have enough time to really dive into this. And this would be great for tomorrow's episode where we are covering everything O3 and what we know about it. So I know you guys are totally ready to go down that rabbit hole. So I'm going to grab your cuff there, pull you back a little bit, and thank everybody in chat for joining us. AI is exciting, especially with all these models coming out. And hopefully we've done a good job in covering what the state of affairs is over the last couple of months, presenting what models are out there. You'll definitely be seeing shows on these individual models coming from us, our experience with them, and perhaps use cases that we're going to use them. So we talked about the Gemini models. We've talked about the DeepSeek. We've talked about O3. And so I want everybody to join us tomorrow for the O3 episode, where we're going to be talking about all the different models there. Karl, hopefully you'll be here so you can give us some further examples, both on O3 and the Deep's research, which is connected to O3. And then, of course, Wednesday is our news day. Thursday, we're going to be talking about Gemini deep research. And Brian, you seem to be super excited about the Gemini and what kind of strides they've made. So please definitely talk about that. Yeah.
The question for Thursday was, did Gemini just kill Perplexity, and where does Storm fit in? And like literally after putting that together, they dropped. I was like, what are you doing to me? So clearly we'll be talking about OpenAI's deep research, and we're just going to talk about whatever happened like 24 hours ago now on this show.
That's welcome to the world of AI. Every 24 hours, there is something new. And then, of course, to wrap up the week, we're going to do our 2-week recap on Friday. So thank you again, everyone, for joining us in chat and all of our viewers. We are always excited to bring you the daily AI information for you. All right. So we'll see you tomorrow. Take it easy and aloha.